Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hello, and welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast. I'm your host, Donna Marston, and today's podcast is sponsored by Snapbands. It's snappbandz.com, and this is a Snapband that I wear, and it says hope, which is great for parents who have a teen or adult child in active addiction, because we always have to hold on to our hope. All you do is give it a little snap, and it either snaps out of those bad thoughts away, or if you're having a craving, it could help with cravings as well. So if you'd like to order one, go to www.snapbands.com. And in the comments, just put SWOS or Sharing Without Shame so that they'll know that you heard it from me, Donna Marston. Today, I'm joined by Barb Nangle, who is a former people pleaser rescuer who became a boundaries coach, dedicated to helping others reclaim their lives by setting healthy boundaries. As the host of Fragmented to Whole, Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery, a weekly podcast since March of 2019, Barb shares powerful insights and transformative lessons, inspiring listeners to embrace personal growth and wholeness. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you so much, Donna. I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks. First question I always ask everybody is, what would you like to share without shame?
So I really appreciate the frame of without shame because I have been riddled with shame my entire life, but I didn't know that that flood of yuckiness was shame. So what I want to share is my story, and I'll try to make it brief. So in 2015, at the age of 52, I hit a codependent bottom. And it resulted from I had invited a homeless friend that I met through church to stay at my home during a snowstorm. He came to my church as a parishioner right around the same time that I had volunteered to lead a project serving homeless people. And I felt it was like a God moment, like God is introducing me to a homeless person so that I can get to know somebody as an individual, so that when I'm doing this project, I'm not serving, quote, the homeless, but like actual people. And he was actually very helpful. So this is like 2, 3, 4 months into our friendship. And I now know like it's not normal to invite a homeless person to stay in your home. Well, he did. And then he stayed another time and another time. And within a few weeks, he was practically living with me. And then I soon felt trapped in my own home. He was an admitted alcoholic and addict. I think looking back now, he may have also been a narcissist. And one day I was in therapy and I was talking about him. In the middle of a sentence, I went, "Oh my God, do you think I need to go to Al-Anon?" And my therapist was like, "Yes." So whatever I put into Google, I was looking for Al-Anon, but the word codependent came up. And I was like, wait a minute, what is this word? Now, let me just put a pin in that for a second. I started therapy when I was 15. I got introduced to self-help at like 22. I've read a gajillion self-help books. I've done workshops, workbooks, spiritual groups, physical fitness, like group support, like you name it, all the things. Never heard this word codependent. Like, how is that possible? And so I started going to Codependents Anonymous and very quickly felt a sense of relief. I think, understanding that like this is almost like a syndrome and that other people have it and that I'm not a bad person and that I can change and heal. And about 6 weeks into going to CODA, well, actually, let me just say, I very quickly felt a sense of relief. And I remember saying to someone, I think I need to be reparented. But I thought I made that term up. I didn't know that was a thing. So 6 weeks into going to CODA, I went away to go visit some friends, one of whom had been in Alcoholics Anonymous for over 10 years at that point. And she had always just raved about how utterly transformed her life was from AA. And I was like, oh, you're going to love this. I'm going to Codependents Anonymous. And she said, this is great. Let's see if we can go to a CODA meeting while you're here. Well, she couldn't find a CODA meeting. She found an ACA meeting, which I knew of as ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Mhm.
Never occurred to me that I qualified for that program. I now know the actual name is Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families that I qualified for. So we walk into the meeting and I was like, I'll go for you because like her dad's an alcoholic. I don't think I qualify. And in the opening reading, they say we reparent ourselves. And I was like, wait, what? And then they read the list of the 14 traits of an adult child. And my friend tells me I sobbed the whole meeting. I don't remember that, but I bought the literature, came home to New Haven, started going to meetings. Within a few weeks, I started working the steps with some other women. Another women's meeting in New Haven started going to that. And I got to tell you, Donna, like all that personal development work I just mentioned, it was like that stuff scratched the surface of the iceberg of my life, and recovery melted the iceberg of my life.
Mm.
And I think there are several reasons. One, like the 12 steps of recovery are an amazing technology. It's spiritually oriented. There's a stepwise process. We do it in groups. But also in ACA, I now know it's a trauma recovery program where you reparent yourself and you use the 12 steps to recover. I didn't know that I had trauma. My trauma is what's called relational trauma. So it's not like the blunt trauma of like being in a hurricane or being attacked or something. It's more the drip, drip, drip of things like
Mm.
emotional validation, invalidation, and gaslighting and stuff. And I was just astonished at the massive like changes and growth and understanding that I was experiencing. And about a year into that journey, I decided to let go of CODA because it was maybe a 75% fit, whereas ACA was 100% fit. And that turned out to be a higher powered moment because one of the women I was doing the 12 steps with in ACA had started going to Overeaters Anonymous and was talking about like her like her relationship with food. And I was shocked. And it wasn't shocked at her relationship with food, it was shocked that she was talking about it because that was me. And so she actually invited me to go to a meeting. I didn't really understand what was going on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm a compulsive overeater. So I'm in ACA, I'm in Overeaters Anonymous. I'm down over 100 pounds from my top weight. I've been at my goal weight. Actually, this weekend, Saturday, will be my 7 years at goal weight. In that program, we call it abstinent, which is equivalent to being sober in an alcohol program. So I've been abstinent in April, will be 9 years. And my life has just been really, really transformed. And I think like learning that thing that happened to me was shame and that I had it over and over and over again. And that a lot of it was me doing it to myself. But then
Mm.
what was really difficult for me was learning that I did that to other people too, was really painful. But also understanding this came from somewhere, as a product of my environment, as were my parents. And so we didn't know any better. And, I've really turned that around. And I think, I love the phrase that you use, the unhelpful helping. Is that the phrase you use?
Unhealthy helper.
Unhealthy helping. And I think like I just want to tell this one little story of when I first got into CODA, and then then I'll stop and we can have a conversation. And that is, as I got into that program, I started to see that there's this continuum of helpfulness where on one end we've got like kindly, helpful, functional, healthy behavior. And on the other end, we've got this like dysfunctional, unhealthy, rescuing, fixing, enabling behavior. And so after a while, I was like, I'm starting to see the difference between the two ends of the continuum. It's in the middle that I get confused. Like, how do we flip over from being helpful to just being, to being just regular helpful to being rescuing? And
Mm.
so this woman that I asked said, well, Barb, it really depends. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it so that they'll like you? And I was like, no, I'm totally doing it because I want to be helpful. And I meant it. But then that question percolated for me, Donna, and I started to see like, oh my God. And it wasn't like she said to me, are you doing it so they'll like you? And it wasn't so much that people would like me. It was more that they would not think badly of me. So don't think I'm a bad person. And to me, a bad person says no and is unhelpful, and
Mm.
that they think that I'm helpful. And I was like, oh my goodness. So once I started to see this question of why am I doing it, that turned into a very powerful question for me. What are my motives? I did not know that I was a people pleaser. I didn't know I was an approval seeker. But starting to see that really opened things up for me. And, of course I wanted to be helpful, but just wanting to be helpful doesn't explain the fact that I would like exhaust myself, quote, helping other people, that I would become resentful from, quote, helping other people, that
Mm-hmm.
I would like just overgive. And like, if you want to just be helpful, then you stop when it doesn't feel helpful anymore. Like you get to be included in the people that you want to be helpful. So this is where I started to see, oh, I am a people pleaser. I am an overgiver. And I am giving things like unsolicited advice. And so another key thing for me is learning it's wonderful to help people, but please get their consent, or better yet, wait
Mm-hmm.
until they ask.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I love CODA, Codependents Anonymous. That I ended up getting the most from them when I
Yeah.
was new to this and learned about myself because I too was a people pleaser and for different reasons. But it's just amazing how what we do, thinking we're being loving, kind, and helping people, and there is an agenda, like you said,
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
to be liked or loved or needed.
Mhm.
And back in the day, I was like a doormat. Your feelings were more important than mine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then I'd resent you because
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
you weren't loving and
After
kind.
all I've given you, after all I've done for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you get nothing in return. And I
Right.
guess we tend to go to the narcissist, I think. At least I did more so with friends. I wanted to ask you, what is a people-pleasing rescuer?
So it's somebody who's a people pleaser and a rescuer. So people pleasing is where we usually lie and manipulate. So we say things are okay
Hmm.
with us when they're not. We say yes to things we don't really want to do. When people say, "How are you?" we say, "I'm fine," when we're dying inside. We act like we like things that we really don't. So that's the dishonest part of people pleasing. And then the manipulative part is we go about whatever we're doing for the express purpose of pleasing people. So we want them to approve of us. So when you
Mm.
have an agenda, as you said, that's manipulative. I'm trying to manipulate people into liking me. So when I found out I was a people pleaser, I was like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person. I lie and I manipulate. Look, if that's you, you're not a horrible person. Like these patterns came from somewhere, typically childhood. And so it was the best that I knew how to do. And I don't do that anymore. And then the rescuer, to me, a rescuer is someone who, like, I'm more invested in your life than you are. That's a rescue. That's a
Yeah.
rescue mission. If
Hmm.
if I'm putting more than 50% effort into our relationship, that's a rescue mission. Like if I'm putting in way more than you, it's a rescue mission. And so now, I have much more balanced relationships. I give. In fact, I actually give more hours per week in service now that I have healthy boundaries than I ever did before. I called myself a volunteeraholic. I volunteered for 15 different nonprofit organizations over the years. But
Wow.
now I give strategically rather than at the drop of a hat. I give by choice, not by compulsion or obligation. And I give after filling my cup first. So I
Mm.
can pour from the overflow rather than trying to pour from an empty cup. And the
Mm.
only way I have overflow is if I fill my cup first. So I've learned it's not selfish to take care of myself. My feelings matter just as much as everyone else's, not more than, but just as much as. But to me, they should matter more because I'm the one that's in charge of my feelings.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think in being honest, not only with ourselves, but with other people,
Mhm,
when,
mhm.
with some of the behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think too, when we talk about rescuing for parents, most often we tend to work harder at our children's recovery than they do.
Yes,
That's part of
yes.
our rescuing.
Yeah, I've seen that many times with my clients. Yes. Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Any tools to coping skills that would help them to stop those behaviors. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
because self-care, I agree with you. We're no good to anybody if we're not taking care
Mhm.
of ourselves first.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
used to think it was selfish, and now I do take care of myself. But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, I think the overall overarching thing is boundaries. I'm a boundaries coach, so of course, that's what I'm going to say. But so I would say it starts with what matters to you. Like, so what I do with my clients is I have them go through a process to identify their top 5 values, like what's important to you, what matters
Hmm.
to you. And then you use those as almost like guideposts or guardrails for where and when to set boundaries. So I'll give financial boundaries as an example, right? Because so much of the enabling of parents tends to be financial, like they're supporting them living at their house, paying for school, paying their rent, paying for their car, paying blah 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 blah, signing up for classes, paying for rehab and all
Paying
that
for the
stuff.
drugs.
Right, and for the and
There's that.
ultimately, right, yeah, and maybe not directly, but indirectly they're doing that. And so like if you want to have a certain lifestyle, then like your value is that I want to have a certain lifestyle. Let's say I want to go on, 2 vacations per year. Then you set up your financial life to support you going on those 2 vacations per year and all the other things you want to do. And if you have money left over, then
Mhm.
you can put a budget, a boundary around the amount of money that you're willing to put towards that child. And that is the amount of money that you put towards them. Now you can decide I will pay for these things. Or you can say, I'm going to put this much money towards you, and that's it for the rest of the year. So, those are called boundaries. So, if it was me, I would say, I will pay for, these 3 things, but I won't pay for anything else. I don't like, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine, most parents can think of what those things they'd be like. School would be an example. I'll pay for your school, that sort of thing. But I've known parents who like bought a condo for their kid and then their kid rented it out to other people and they trashed it, or they bought a car for their kid and then the kid sold it, or they paid for the kid to go to an education program and they dropped out after 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So you have to decide. And I think the other really super important thing, like it's a mantra that I have, is like keep the focus on yourself. Keep the focus on yourself, because what happens when we have someone we love that has a substance use disorder is we get super focused on them and what they're doing, or maybe what they're not doing, and we start to basically be controlling. And
Hmm.
the problem with being focused out there on them is twofold. One, the energy is going in the outward direction, and two, it's an endless drain because you're trying to control something that you cannot control. So it's just an absolute drain. Whereas if you turn that energy around and point it inward towards yourself, you can actually make a difference. So I give a variety of ways for people to keep the focus on themselves. So one is to ask yourself, what do I want or need here? I never asked myself that. It was always about, what does he need? What does she need? What do they need? What does the
Hmm.
situation need? Number two, like, is this really my business? Like, is this my
Oh,
territory?
huge.
And then like in recovery, the phrase we use is, what's my part? Another way
Mm.
to say that is like, what could I do differently? If I don't like the dynamic here, I can't change their end of the dynamic, but I can change my end. So what am I doing, and how could I change that? Another one is, whose feelings are these? So partly that's, we feel other people's feelings. I know before I had healthy boundaries, I was permeable. I literally felt other people's feelings,
Hmm.
and therefore I needed them to be okay so that
Hmm.
I could be okay. And I especially needed them to be okay with me. So those are their feelings and they get to manage them. And then, so it's not like other people get to be upset and other people get to be upset with you. Like if someone is upset, you can say, you seem upset. Would you like me to cheer you up? And if they say no, then no. Or you can just say, oh, you look upset. If you want to talk, let me know. But to
Yeah.
feel like I have to cheer them up, I have to get them to be happy. And that's what I felt like. And so those are their feelings to manage. They're not my feelings. I get to manage my own feelings. And then the last way that I recommend keeping the focus on yourself is about self-care. And to me, self-care is what fuels you. So our job is to figure out what's draining me and let me decrease that, and what is fueling me and let me increase that. And it should be something consistent, not, I get my nails done once a week. Like, that's wonderful. That's maintenance, right? We're talking about what is going to fuel you personally. It's mostly conscious contact with my higher power, yoga, meditation, prayer, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like, what fuels you? So, what do I want or need? Is this my business? What's my part? Whose feelings are these? And am I taking good care of myself? Those are the ways that I recommend that people keep the focus on themselves so that they're not being just endlessly drained.
And I think it's tough, is this my business? I had to learn this the hard way. When it was
Mhm.
my son, I'd be like, yeah, it is
Yeah.
my business. Even though
Mhm.
he was an adult, it's my
Mhm.
business. He was
Mhm.
still
Mhm.
living at home, so I made it my business. And as he got more into his recovery, and I'd have a thought or whatever, I'd have to ask myself, is this my business? Nine
Mhm.
times out of 10,
Mhm.
90, 9.5 times, probably
Let's
even
be real.
more,
Yeah. Yeah.
it wasn't my business. He let
Right.
it
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that is a real tough one, especially when you've made it your business to make everyone else your business your entire life. That was absolutely a really tough one. And for me, the way I think about it now, Donna, is I call it being situated in my own self. I'm situated in my life, in myself, and in my body. And so I'm really clear what's my business now and what's not, but I didn't used to be. It used to be very, very difficult for me. Like, if I saw somebody having a problem, to me, I'm a good citizen. It's my job to go help them. Like, it just felt like it's my business, and it's actually not. And
Mhm,
so again, I'm still helpful, but I give strategically, not at strangers walking down the street that I don't
mhm.
even know, who I've decided need my help. And I don't foist my help on people. Like, there were times I can see now where people didn't even see themselves as requiring help. And yet I was like, let me help you with that. And they're like, what? Wait, I don't see this as a problem. Like, so I'm telling you, you have a problem and I'm going to fix it for you, whether you think it's a problem or not.
Right. Whether you like it or not, get over it.
Yeah. Right,
Here comes Barb
exactly.
to the
And
rescue.
then when people refuse, like, getting upset, like, what is the matter with them? And when here's a flag, this is like a red flag phrase. When you say, I was just trying to help, something's gone wrong here. Because if you're saying that phrase, like, you're trying to justify your quote helpful behavior to someone who didn't really think it was helpful.
And it goes back to what's your why?
Mm,
Why you're doing what you're
right,
doing.
right. Mhm,
And I do that with the parents that I work with. I'll
mhm.
always ask them, what's your why? And they're like, what do you mean by that? Because it's my child. That's my why. No,
Right.
it's bigger than that.
Mhm,
It's not
mhm.
just about that. Why
Yeah,
do people ingest,
yeah,
drugs or alcohol or whatever? It's always about the why.
yeah. And I think, there's so many people that have relationships with people with substance use disorders, but I think it's especially hard for parents because when they're growing up, it is your job to take care of them and it is your business. And so the hardest job of parents, like substance use notwithstanding, is to hand over the reins of their
Yeah,
kid's life. And then if they
yeah,
have a substance use disorder, like, it's already hard to do that.
yeah.
And so then if they have a substance use disorder, it's even harder than that.
Yeah. Well, you figure the first 18 years of their lives, we're telling them what to do, how to do, and when to do it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're 18 or well, in New Hampshire, they're
Mhm.
considered an adult at 17. It's like hands off. I'm an adult and I can do what I want to do. And it's like,
Yeah.
but your brain isn't completely developed.
Right,
I'm your
right, right.
mother and I
Yeah,
know best.
yeah.
And so I'm going to take care of this. And one of the things I recently learned, didn't even know this, I'm learning so much late in life, which is really a shame.
But this is why elders are wise, because they can actually absorb that stuff.
Good. Is that when I was trying to control my son's addiction, I was there's so much fear. So control is really our fear taking over and trying to manage everything.
Right, right. Yeah. So thinking if I can just control this, all the things I fear will go away, except for that we can't actually control those things. So there's an equation that we're using that is a false equation, which is I can control this and I can control this. That's we can't. And then my fear will go away.
Well, and even taking it a step further, and I think this is damaging. And again, I learned this the hard way, that by me trying to do everything, and I was working at his recovery harder than he was. I'm saying, listen, I can do it better than you. So why don't you get out of the way and
Yes.
let me do it for you?
Yes. Right.
And what
Yeah.
a put down.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, like I know better than you about you and your life and what's going on, and that's not something that is going to like again, notwithstanding substance use. If that's the attitude you have in bringing up your children, they're not going to become adults who can function
Yeah.
because our job, like I'm not a parent, but like as adults in the world, the job of parents, I heard this quote years ago, the most important things we can give our kids is roots and wings. So we want them to be rooted in like what matters and what's important and the love of family and community and all that. But we want to give them wings so that they can fly away and spread and figure out, who do I want to be in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me seems like it's the hardest part because we should be teaching our kids over the years more and more ways to be autonomous and to learn to make decisions and have the repercussions
Mm-hmm.
of those decisions, even if they're bad. So I'll give you an example that I bet a lot of parents here can identify with. If your kid comes to you at 9 o'clock at night and says, I have a school project that's due tomorrow, and you get up and you help them, and you stay up all night with them doing it, you've just taught them that they don't have to take care of themselves and they don't have to, they're going to rely on you, which means they're going to do it for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say to them, wow, that's too bad, you should have thought of that earlier. What are you going to do about that? Like give them the autonomy to make a decision. And if they get an F, then they get an F. Or if they stay up all night working on a project and they go to school the next day completely dazed because they stayed up all night, that's their repercussions. It's not yours. You are not being a bad parent. You are being a good parent who teaches their children we have consequences to our actions and our decisions. And that when
Mm-hmm.
somebody engages in some kind of negative behavior, they themselves should be reaping the negative consequences of that. That's the natural order of things. If you hit your thumb with a hammer, you're the one who should have the pain in your thumb. But if your mom keeps putting her hand on top of your thumb and she gets whacked, then you're never going to learn to not whack your thumb. I've literally never said that before. I don't think that's the best analogy, but it's what came to me at the moment.
I think it's accountability. And one of the things, and was so guilty of this, that if my children didn't look perfect or good and do their homework, and I was one of those moms, if you came to me at
Mhm,
9, I'm going to help you. I'm not going to be happy. And
mhm,
then I'm upset,
mhm,
but I
mhm.
didn't want it to be a reflection of us as a
Right,
family.
right. She's a bad parent because your kids are not dressed well, they're not doing their homework and all that kind of thing. Right. And it's like your children are actually not extensions of you. They're their own people.
Right. And so, there's my self-centeredness, and I never thought I was a self-centered person, right?
Mhm,
Again, learning this stuff late in life, it's just
mhm.
really interesting, and it's all in the name of love.
Yeah. You know what you just made me think of? I had this friend, this was a million years ago. She had a 5-year-old daughter and twins that were like 2.5. And she worked as a school secretary at the school where the 5-year-old went. And every single morning she would get into this huge fight with her daughter who wanted to wear mismatched clothes. And my friend was like Miss Stylish and she was like, not happening. You are not going to school like that. And one of her friends because she was like, I can't let her dress like that. What will people think? And her
Mhm.
friend said, they will think that she's 5 and she dressed herself. That's what they'll think. Like everybody will know that
Yeah.
5-year-old dressed herself. They're not going to be like, oh my God, what a horrible. I mean, there might be some people who are
Yeah.
what a horrible mother, but everybody will know that kid dressed herself. but
Well,
she's
those
still,
are going to be the same people that are doing it with their kids and making them dress
exactly.
the way they want.
Right.
Those are the
Yeah.
ones that are going to
Right.
judge, right?
Yeah. And so my friend was disturbed at her daughter for disturbing the morning routine
Mm,
every single day. And it was like, well, if you just let go and let her wear whatever she wanted, then there wouldn't be a disturbance. So it's actually not her, it's you.
right.
Because she was trying to bend her daughter's will. And she's
Yeah.
5. She's like, I want to wear the pink dress and the yellow, whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, it all comes down to control.
Right. And it starts when they're young. So these examples I'm giving you are like, if you have young kids and you're listening to this and you're doing these kinds of things, your controlling behavior has already started.
Sure. Yeah, it's the programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the unfortunate thing is if we don't heal from our parents' trauma or all the
Mm-hmm.
different generations, we carry it into our kids
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then they carry it into their kids unless
Right.
that one
Yeah.
person that comes in and is sensitive and starts, not that they have to be sensitive to change, but
Mm-hmm.
they're willing to
Mm-hmm.
go out there and do the healing, and then
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that healing helps them with their
Mm-hmm.
children living
Yeah.
healthier, happier lives. I want to
That's
ask
the
you.
ACA program that I'm in that you're talking about. It's actually about intergenerational family dysfunction, which results in childhood trauma. And we, especially in the last 20 years, we know like trauma is rampant. The history of human beings is like warfare.
Yeah.
People have been being like killed and maimed and raped and pillaged and burned forever. And that stuff lives in our tissues and in our genetic memories and stuff like that. So even if you grew up in a really healthy family, there's something going on there. And then the other thing I want to say is just because you have a dysfunctional family and just because you had trauma doesn't mean that your family wasn't loving. Those are not mutually exclusive. And I think it's important for parents to hear that. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
mean you don't love your kid even if they have trauma. It's just you're doing the best you can with what you have.
And you look at like my generation, baby boomers got married, what, 19, 20, they're kids.
Right.
My parents, generation, they were married at, right out of high school, if not their senior year. It's
Hmm.
babies raising babies.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so they're carrying along their cart full of all their crap because they haven't unpacked any of it. Because
Hmm.
if you look at the different generations, that my
Hmm.
grandparents, you don't talk about anything. My mother's generation, you don't, everything's a secret. My
Hmm.
generation, baby boomers, you're seen, not heard.
Hmm.
And it all trickles down till someone says, no, I'm
Mhm.
not doing that to my children. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that if you were crying, I'll give you something to cry for.
Right. Oh my God. That was like one of the worst things that my dad would say to me is, okay, wait, I'm 5. I am crying. What are you telling me? It was this crazy making for me.
I hate that. And
Yeah.
I had an aunt who was famous for that, and she said that to my children. And I said, don't you dare. If
Mm.
they're crying, there's a reason for it.
Yeah,
And we
good
can
for
have a
you.
conversation, but don't you ever say that to my children. And I
Yeah.
adored this woman, but
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it stops here. But yeah, but that's the stuff. If we don't
Hmm.
stop it, these little kids,
Right.
they they carry it along till
Hmm.
they hit a roadblock or something that awakens them that they need to change, whether it's an addiction or mental health or just because, right? It could be for any reason that
Hmm.
this doesn't feel good, and I want to do what feels good. I want to unload all this stuff and get rid of it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it's so much. It is
Mhm.
so much.
But
It's
it's worth it because, I did not know how dysfunctional I was or my family was. I didn't know how many areas of my life were not really working. I was never in a healthy romantic relationship. I'm finally in the first and only healthy romantic relationship. We've been together in October was 6 years, and I had no idea it could be like this. I really didn't.
hmm.
And it has everything to do with 12-step recovery and my healthy boundaries. Like he has really healthy boundaries too, which is one of the reasons that attracted me to him. And I think what that boils down to in its essence, as soon as something bothers us, we say something. We deal with things right away. We don't let anything fester. and
Mm.
we own our stuff and we apologize, when we've done or said something wrong. And, we don't take things personally. We don't blame, like I want to blame him for stuff and I want to make things he does mean that he doesn't love me, but I have so much evidence that he deeply does. I'll give you an example. So I just took down my Christmas tree last week. I had a fake Christmas tree. And I'm in the bathroom and there's some of those like fake pine needles. And in my head, I'm like, oh, this is him. He tracked these into my bathroom. And I'm like, wait a minute. The tree is in the basement now. He wasn't in the basement. It was me. Like I automatically assume it's
Mm.
and so now I'm like, oh, okay, this is what my mind wants to do, is just blame other people all the time. It's just automatic. And I have to like use my, frontal lobe to be like, wait a minute. Like even if it was him, it's a freaking fake pine needle. Pick it up and put it in the garbage. It's not like
Right.
he's destroyed my home.
Right. Well, and then when we're pointing the finger, right? There's three parts
Yes,
to that.
yes,
So like, okay,
yeah,
what's my part here?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So tell me about fragmented to whole.
So great question, because yesterday my 300th episode came out.
Congratulations.
Uh,
Woohoo.
So the subtitle is Life Lessons from 12-Step Recovery. And I started it really because, as I mentioned, recovery melted the iceberg of my life, whereas all that other stuff I did before just sort of scratched the surface. And I wanted all of this wisdom and life skills and tips and tricks and mindset shifts that I was learning in recovery, none of which I had ever heard of in all of my almost 40 years of personal development.
Mm.
And so I wanted to get that wisdom out into the world. And so they're 10 to 20-minute episodes, except for 300. I did a long version of my story of recovery. And actually, the week before, I kind of did like the backstories of
Mm.
Fragmented to Whole. So those episodes are longer. And I really just started it because I wanted to get the wisdom out into the world from recovery. And prior to that, I had frequently gotten fed back to me by other fellows in recovery that there was something about the way that I talk about my recovery that's helpful to them. And I'm like, I'm just talking, like, I don't know what it is. There's something about the way that I express myself that is in some way helpful. So I was like, well, I might as well record this stuff. I had no idea what I was doing. I stumbled my way here. I'm
Mm.
not stumbling anymore. Like I'm much more strategic now. And it never occurred to me it would really have anything to do with my business. It's the number one way that I get clients now. And I really, so I have like 40 something episodes about boundaries, but it's really just lessons that I've learned in the context of 12-step recovery. Sometimes there are things that I really didn't learn in recovery, but I talk
Mhm.
and when I share, I act like I'm in a meeting and I'm sharing my story, or I'm talking to a fellow in recovery, and it's very conversational. I also swear a lot. So if you don't like the F word, you probably shouldn't listen.
Well, I would never have thought that of you.
Yeah, well, it's how I talk. And my sponsor says she's kind of shocked that I talk that way because she's like, you're so whatever, all the things she says about me. And I'm like, no, I've been swearing my entire life and I'm not going to act like I don't. So
Yeah,
I do.
I love your honesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
So I have a free boundary building starter kit. If you go to
Ooh.
boundariesstarterkit.com, that will take you to my website. You can download the free, it's like a multimedia starter kit. It teaches you like if you say yes and you want to say no, if you're neglecting yourself, if you don't know what words to say, like there's so much content in there. Well, it's on my website. So everything about how to get in contact with me. And then also in the kit, there's opportunities if you want to sign up for a call with me, which is how people, if they think they want to coach with me.
Mhm.
And then my favorite place to hang out on social media is Instagram. I'm at Higher Power Coaching. And so they can just DM me on Instagram. But
Okay.
those are the best ways to get a hold of me and also get lots. And I have tons of free content on boundaries on Instagram as well.
Okay. Um, and before we go, any words of wisdom you'd like to leave everybody with?
Well, usually I say keep the focus on yourself, but I already went through all that. So I think the one last thing I will say is that when you're talking with other people, especially if it's about something difficult, please make sure you use I language, because
Mm-hmm.
that keeps the focus on you.
Yeah.
And you're much more likely to have actual communication. Whereas if you talk about them, they're much more likely to go on the defensive and conflict ensues. So example might be, you never listen. Whereas what you would want to say is, I don't feel heard, because you never listen feels like an attack, and they're going to go on the defensive, and the conversation will be about whether they ever listen or not, when the actual issue is, I don't feel heard. And it's pretty hard for someone to dispute that. And you're much more
Mm-hmm.
likely to have an actual like communication about what's going on. So
Yeah.
I language, super important, keeps the focus on you and avoids conflict.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
Oh, my
coming.
pleasure.
This has been great.
Yeah, thank you. I love the conversation. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.